Yeah, man. And I think that it's a bad idea to me, it's a bad idea to do that. And then going back to the very first example I gave you, I think that's what started to happen was got, um, I ended up learning more than my business partner, and that hierarchy and all that. It just got real muddy, and we start fighting. Like I'm the dominant now.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I am the so I
And there's no jujitsu mat where you can easily show who's currently the dominant one. It's
no.
more, yeah, it's such a passive aggressive game in a way that takes
Yes.
too much time, and it's difficult. You know what? Now that you mention that, that's one of the mistakes that I probably made in that example I was talking about. And by the way, like I know for a fact I made a lot of mistakes uh, in that. It's not like I'm not guilty of anything, and I know that I did. And one of the things I did, and maybe was kind of considering but not fully, is like that structural, that hierarchy. The I started acting probably a little bit too much like a partner before I was given that official role. And then maybe that wasn't really liked by the existing people, even though the value potentially, at least I can make a case that the value was there to act that way.
Well, what about you? And the question you just asked me, how do you form partnerships in a manner that protects everything?
In my current business, I decided I was going to do it on my own. I did not want to have a partner. I didn't want to deal with anything. I had just gotten married too. That's the biggest partnership that you can have.
That's right.
And I wanted to focus on that partnership. So I was going to do this on my own, see if I could even do it on my own, I think was part of it. Another part of it was I had no idea who I was going to partner with. So I just had to do it on my own. And but now with all the trainings that we've gotten, masterminds and the courses, and seeing these experts, um, like learning from Roland Frazier, who's partnered with hundreds of businesses, probably, we're learning from Perry, we're learning from all these guys, and paperwork, yes. The other thing is, when you distribute equity, is kind of one of the most important parts of a whole business. A lot of times it's like, okay, there's two of us, we're just going to be 50-50 and let's go. And then turns out one guy does all the work and the other guy is 50%, and it's not fair. And there's this really cool method that was recommended, was I believe it's a book called Splitting the Pie. And it doesn't have to be this way, but it's a good way of thinking about it, where the equity is not distributed immediately. You still have your pie of 100%, and over the next 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, depending on what you put in and the value that you bring, is the equity that you earn, even if it's just the two of you. Even if it's just the two of you, I think. And then so by the end of the year, one guy has 70%, one guy has 30, your inner flow, it makes sense. You can even make it 2 years, like whatever time frame you want to structure it before the business starts. Instead of working on your logo, work on how you're going to distribute the equity.
I think that's nice. Now you have very clear expectations on, you know, if you do X, then you get Y. And so now when it comes time, the year, 2 years, or whatever it is, you have these measurables. You can see, where do you fail on those measurables? And then that tells you what you get as far as percentage wise. I think that's really smart.
And in addition to that, I think it's actually helpful for the business to succeed, because now everyone's measuring the work that they're doing. And when you measure something, you
Yeah.
can improve on it. And so most of the time, I think these new startups, new businesses, they're not measuring, they're just going and working. And it's like, yeah, I worked all day. I worked 3 days. I worked 100 hours this week. But what did you do exactly? And you're not measuring it. And this reminds me of people going on a diet or starting to count their macros. They're like, I only eat 2,000 calories a day and I only eat one dessert per week. And when you actually start measuring it, they're eating 3,500 calories,
Yeah.
and 60% of it is carbs and sugar.
I think to, to add on to this, I lean towards having partners, and I'll use a very specific example or a clear example, a relevant example is I'm looking at partnering up with you on a project outside of this. And one of the things that is that besides the trust factor, right? You got to be careful who you're partnering up with. There's got to be a vibe there. So besides the trust factor, that's a whole other conversation. It's Dimitri brings something to the table that I don't. You have a strength in the data side. It's you're stronger than most others when it comes to that, and that's just the way your brain works. And so now here we are, somebody who I vibe with, I trust, right? And it can't just be that. It can't just be like, oh, we're just homeboys. If we both have the same strength, well, then how's the business advance? How's the project advance? Whereas you have a very different skill set, unique, and an important one from there to where it would help the project move in a direction that I wouldn't be able to do just by myself. And then the fact that, yeah, could I go hire somebody to like tell me to read the data and stuff? Yeah, but then I'm just kind of hiring somebody who's coming in and they're just like, yeah, I'll read this, whatever, give you the data, done. Whereas you come in there and you own it, own half of it, you're going to look at it completely different with your skill set. It's a completely different investment. I like partnering up with people who are stronger than me, or let's go back to another jujitsu thing. There's people in the gym that I have to go fight more than others because I have a harder time with them. So they help me, like they do something, they help me, they expose a weakness of mine. So now I go and work on that weakness. So for me, I like partnering with people who help me compensate for my weaknesses or get stronger in them.
Well, that makes sense. I can't disagree with that part of partnering with people who have something that you don't have. You don't want to be identical. You don't want to have identical skill set because then who's going to do the stuff that you guys aren't good at? That doesn't make sense as a partnership. While you were saying that, I started to get this feeling of like, what are we doing as even people, but what are we doing as business owners, as entrepreneurs when we're partnering? We want to partner with people that we like. Just like we want to live with, back in college, we want to live with someone that we like, someone that we're friends with. Sometimes that really doesn't work out.
Yep.
It goes south very, very quickly and you lose that relationship. But it sounds like it sounds like to reach a certain level of connection, whether it be from a business perspective or personal, you have to take the risk. You have to risk losing that relationship to take it to the next level. If you aren't willing to risk what you have, then you probably shouldn't enter into like a serious new partnership. You could maybe test the waters. That's another tip, by the way, and we've heard that a lot, is before you really go head first into something with anybody, someone you know or a stranger, test the waters first. See if it's a fit for a month or 3 months. And maybe it's not a fit, or maybe the business doesn't work and you can just move on from it. But not everyone is equipped to be friends and have business together or live together or what. Like there's so many variables that don't always all align.
That what you just said is exactly what happened to me. I had I think the story you told me, or you told this everybody here earlier about your friends slash potential business partners, and you've told me a bit more about it. That story really hit home for me when you first told me about it. I got emotional about it, and I think one of the reasons I got emotional about it is because when I first moved out of college, I moved in with my best friend for my basketball team. Didn't go well. We're not friends today. We don't beef or anything, but we're not. Our relationship should be. We should. He was my best friend, right? I don't lose friends. When you're in my circle, you're my circle. He's the only one I lost, and that sucked. In some ways, traumatic because I was real close to the guy. I think that for me, the things that have this is not always feasible, but what is helpful is when you can test the relationship under stress before you proceed. Cosm has given me one of the best examples. When I hire people, I hire a contract. It's a lot of contract work, but before I even interview them, I like to give them a test job just to see what happens because I'm trying to stress test them before as opposed to all this lip service or whatever. what happens when I actually put the pressure on you or give you the job, and let's see what you do before I
Mhm.
would meet with you. I think even you and I'm not going to talk about the conversation here on air. You and I have had very candid conversation. I could think of one in particular, very candid conversation. This ain't soft, and it's not stuff that anybody can just listen to or take or even like it's just not popular subjects, right? Not popular opinions. And when you're able to have that with somebody and progress from it or get stronger as a result of it is a sign. And same thing with you talking about marriage earlier. The true test, at least with me and my wife, have been the hard times. You know, losing our son and fights and this, and we grew as a result. You know, that's nothing that I could test prior to us getting married. What I am saying is that the true test of a partnership or relationship is when it goes rough or when it gets hard, and if you can somehow gauge that or even make it happen, it helps.
Yeah, and the beauty of a marriage is that even in the maybe the worst of times, you made a vow to work it out, and you can still count on the opportunity to fix it. One of the things that I think is lacking from partnerships or friendships for that matter is that there isn't that quite that same level of commitment, which is understandable. I mean, like you can't
Yeah,
really, but like one of the regrets that I have is not having the opportunity to have sat down face to face and just whether it took an hour or a week of literally having to be in the same room for a week and working through every single point, I think we could have come out not necessarily in a partnership, but at least not where it was so devastating where, I'm having health issues because of it.
yeah.
I'm having cancerous moles pop up because of it, because of how stressful it was. I really regret the fact that was not an available option, or at least I couldn't figure out a way to make that happen.